There have been nearly 300 mass shootings so far this year, but you've probably only heard about a handful of them. Why are we so apathetic to these incidences of mass murder? Hey everybody, thanks for watching DNews today. I'm Trace. According to federal statutes, a mass killing is when 3 or more people are killed in one incident. The stats you hear in the news get confusing because everyone counts things differently. But according to a director of research at the Minnesota Department of Corrections, Grant Dewey, there were 909 mass killings from 1900 to 1999. In the 90s, it averaged a little more than 4 per year. But from 2000 to 2013, we were averaging more than 11 per year. And that's using federal definitions. If we include people who were both wounded or killed by gunfire in one incident, we found 294 mass shootings occurred in 2015 alone. Even though there are more mass killings now, we're not seeing that reflected in national attention. We just seem meh on the whole thing. According to Pew Research Center's Project for Excellence in Journalism, 29% of local news stories in 2005 were about crime. By 2012, it had dropped to 17%. Why? Perhaps because people are habituating. Habituation is the act of psychological adaptation. We're getting used to hearing about mass shootings. The story doesn't change, and when it doesn't change, we begin to ignore it. As President Obama intimated this week, these shootings are becoming routine. We literally cannot focus on each individual crime, and that causes psychological numbness. Genocides, holocausts, ethnic cleanses, civil wars, insurgencies, all of these have become routine in some way. I mean, chances are you just started to tune out listening to that list right now. Media theorists and psychologists call this the issue attention cycle. As described by Anthony Downs in the book Up and Down with Ecology, the issue attention cycle, first, we are alarmed. How could this happen? We cry. And then we move through the stages. As the problem becomes real, we discover the solution isn't easy. After a period of intense focus and debate, public interest begins to decline, and eventually we enter the post-problem stage. Here, quote, the issue falls into a twilight realm of lesser attention of spasmodic recurrences of interest. Often, says Downs, by the post-problem stage, which is stage 5, we've created programs, institutions, and policies to try and solve the problem at hand, although not always. In the end, the cycle can be reinvigorated when the new iteration of the story presents itself, like a massive school shooting, a theater shooting, a military base shooting, or the like. Each narrative is somehow novel, and the novelty reinvigorates attention, but otherwise, school shootings are joining the list of things we just don't have the psychological wherewithal to stick to. Humans have to habituate. Without this biological mandate, every tree would be a brand new tree. We'd never be able to discern new information from the repeated information surrounding it. Because of habituation, mass might be the biggest obstacle. After each tragedy, the media attempts to implement frame changing to move the narrative around, pulling the novel information out of the clutter to tell you a new story. In coverage of Columbine, the media attached faces and names to victims. But to change their frame, Sandy Hook's coverage was led by gun control debates raging throughout the country. These 2 mass shootings weren't necessarily novel situations, but they mixed personal stories with new coverage and thus stood out in our national attention. As described by a paper in 2014's Homicide Studies, without novel ways to tell an old story, we, and the media, pretty much ignore tragedies. Dr. Paul Slovic, professor of psychology at the University of Oregon, writes, when it comes to eliciting compassion, the identified individual victim with a face and a name has no peer. By covering these events with numbers instead of names, by covering them as much as we do, and by failing to create institutions and policies to fix the problems, we get stuck. If you blame media, blame government, blame humans, you'd be right each time. To break the cycle, we need to make a change. Ignoring it, refusing to make changes or acknowledge that the problem exists, and just hoping the shootings stop won't work, and hasn't. But if we actively adopt some solution to fix the mass shooting problem, future stories will automatically be frame changed. Thus, we will pay attention to them. Hard science doesn't have an easy answer to this social issue. Instead, we are left with a difficult one. Look at our failings, find a solution, and find a way to fix the problem. In Psychological Science Agenda, Dr. Slovic wrote, the repetitiveness of such atrocities, ignored by powerful people in nations and by the general public, calls for explanations that may reflect some fundamental deficiency in our humanity, a deficiency that once identified might possibly be overcome. Tell me about your feelings about this topic down below in the comments. Our sister shows Seeker and Test Tube News are also covering this story today. Even though we outlined the data, we left it to Test Tube News to answer, why are there so many mass shootings? So check that out here.
When addressing the total number of mass shootings, there is a clear and defined correlation between the number of guns and rates of shootings. A Harvard study found that wherever there are more guns, there is more homicide, even after accounting for rates of assault, robbery, unemployment, poverty, and alcohol consumption.
Thanks for watching DNews, everyone. Please subscribe for more. If you had a conversation with your friends about why no one seems to care about mass shootings anymore, share this video with them and further your conversation. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.